Wildflowers and the Woeful Witch, written by Tina Talbot and illustrated by Judith Matthews. "We're lost," announced Poppy, hopelessly looking around the forest. She and her wildflower friends, Sunny, Rosie, Daisy, had just left the Wise Owl and were now trying to find their way home. Poppy, a stunningly beautiful flaming red poppy, looked up at the sun as it rose steadily into its early morning position. The forest had woken up from its slumber and was now teeming with animals, insects and reptiles, all scurrying about in different directions. Grass snakes slithered, field mice scampered, bees buzzed, and butterflies fluttered as they greeted the flowers with their usual morning vigour. A roe deer bounded past as a field fowl foraged for food in the long grass, whilst listening out for any predatory foxes that might be waiting to pounce. Birds playfully swooped as ladybirds, ants and beetles crawled among the foliage, hungrily munching for their breakfast. A little mole bravely poked his head out of the ground to see what was going on before going back to digging his tunnel. Everything was as it should be. The forest was in full swing, its morning rush hour perfectly brought about by the chaotic interactions of all the woodland creatures. "At least we're starting our journey in the daylight this time," murmured Poppy, distracted by all the excitement and commotion around her. "Yes," agreed Sunny, in his usual easy-going, cheerful manner. "But which way should we go from here?" he asked, trying to work out where they were. Sunny, an optimistic and happy sunflower, looked around the forest, his bright yellow petals attracting the admiration of a passing bee, a butterfly, and a dragonfly who had ventured away from a nearby babbling brook. "Well," answered Rosie, a wild and untamed briar rose with the delicate pink petals which camouflaged her determined and fiercely independent nature. "The sun rises in the east, so we should head in the opposite direction, towards the west. I am sure that's the way we came from," she said confidently. Daisy smiled a mischievous smile at her friends. "I'm just happy that we are all best friends again," she remarked, remembering the naughty tricks that she had played on them as they went looking for the Wise Owl. "So I don't mind which way we go home." Taking charge, Rosie steered her friends towards the west. Obediently, they followed, comforted by her confidence and savouring the feeling of the sun's growing warmth on their backs. They jumped over logs, weaved in and out of the long grass, and skipped through the woodland, consoled by the sound of chirping, buzzing, humming, and soothed by the dappled light shining through the leaves on the trees. The willful wildflowers marched homeward with a spring in their step. However, it wasn't long before they realised that something was wrong. All of a sudden, the comforting noises of the forest could not be heard anymore, and the woods had become dense and dark. Barbed brambles and hostile stinging nettles had appeared out of nowhere. It was difficult for the wildflowers to find a path to follow. "Where have all the animals and flowers gone?" asked Sunny, uneasy. The forest had become eerily still and silent. Unexpectedly, a red squirrel leapt onto the branch of a rotten-looking tree in front of the wildflowers, breaking the silence and startling them into the process. "Turn around, run away. It's not safe for you here, wildflowers," he warned them, the colour of his fur alerting them to the imminent danger ahead. The squirrel was shaking with fear as he spoke, half expecting to be caught any moment. Hurriedly, the squirrel explained, "There is a wicked witch who lives in this part of the forest. She does not like flowers. Legend has it that she used to be a beautiful crimson sunbird with a patch of fiery orange-red feathers, her breast and yellow-green wings as golden as the sun itself. However, she was banished by her father, the king of the crimson sunbirds, because she was jealous that her brothers and sisters sang more beautiful than she did. So to teach her a lesson, her father cast a spell into a sorceress, a witch you'll be forevermore until you find the power of 4, only to be reunited with your kin when you learn that true beauty comes from within. Bewitched, he sent her away from her home and told her that the spell would not be broken until she learned to be compassionate and kind. The only way she believes she will find the power of 4 is from the magic of 4-leaf clover. Every day she searches high and low, leaving no stone unturned, but she's never managed to find one. With every passing season she becomes more and more frustrated, bitter and twisted. She can't bear to see or hear beauty of any kind, as it makes her envious and spiteful. So she casts an evil spell on all the woodland creatures who create beauty through art, especially singing. Please run away, wildflowers, before she sees you. Your beauty will displease her and send her into a jealous rage. The squirrel jumped off the branch and scurried away as abruptly as he came, leaving a swirling trail of dust behind him. "What shall we do?" asked Poppy. Daisy replied, feeling brave. "Do you remember what the wise owl told us?" she asked her friend. "He said they were beautiful on the inside because we help the pollinate to survive. We inspire artists to create works of art. He told us that each one of us is special in our own way, and that's what makes us strong as a team. I propose that we stay and help the animals. What do you think?" Sunny, Rosie, and Poppy agreed unanimously. Deep in the forest, unaware that there were trespassers in her domain, the woeful witch sat in a sinister cave, hidden away from everyone. It was a forbidding place, dark and gloomy, the only light coming from the glowworms that she had captured and imprisoned in glass jars, and the smouldering fire burning beneath the big black cauldron. There were spiders in every nook and cranny, bats hanging menacingly from the ceiling, and woodlice scurrying around the edges of the cold, damp floor. Discarded 2 and 3-leaf clovers scattered about her feet. A broomstick-pointed black cat rested against the side of the frog she sat on. The witch, whose name was Circe, wiped the dirt off one of the glass jars and looked at her reflection. Although she was beautiful, her long tangled black hair and the scowl on her face made her look ugly and unfriendly. She wore rags with spikes on her shoulders, and there was envy behind her wicked eyes. Unhappy with her appearance, she threw the glass jar across the cave, smashing it into a million pieces. The terrified glowworms had been imprisoned in the jar took to the opportunity to escape as quickly as their little legs and tails could carry them. Still resentful of her siblings for seeing more beautifully than she did, and jealous of anything more beautiful than herself, she took out her crystal and ball and looked inside it, but there she saw an image of the forest. Good, she thought, everything is bleak and ugly, just how I want it. The animals are too afraid of me to do their jobs, the flowers are hiding, and the trees are droopy and bare. All the streams and brooks are murky, even the sun is too scared to shine. Satisfied, Circe smiled, a cold and ugly smile. She looked over at her cauldron. The green gurgling potion was bubbling away nicely. Pleased with its progress, she grabbed a list of spells which she had attached to the prickles of a terrified hedgehog she had captured earlier, and ran one of her long fingernails down to the spell she was making. She noticed that there was one ingredient missing. Just at that moment, a little mouse scurried past. The witch saw him out of the corner of her eye and grabbed him by his tail. "Aha! Just what I need to complete my spell," she smirked. The little mouse gulped. Circe waved her magic wand and muttered some words under her breath. "Spit from a frog, sting from a bee. With this little mouse I will make everyone as miserable as me." However, before she dropped the terrified little mouse into her magic concoction, she noticed something curious in her crystal ball that made her immediately stop in her tracks. Meanwhile, back in the lifeless forest, the willful wildflowers came upon a common field grasshopper sitting in the middle of a short grassy spot. He looked up at the wildflowers with a sad face. What's wrong? He asked Sunny, who did not like anyone to be unhappy. The evil witch has put a spell on all the grasshoppers, he replied. She has stopped us from moving on our hind legs. When we rub them up against our wings, we create beautiful music. She has taken away our ability to play our legs like a bow on a cello. All the animals in the forest love to hear us perform because we sound like the string section of a symphony orchestra. The grasshopper bowed his head and cried. Feeling sorry for the grasshopper, Sunny took a bright yellow petal from his body and gave it to him. Hold my petal in your hand, it will protect you from the witch, he said. When the grasshopper took Sunny's petal, something magical happened. His legs started to move, and then a beautiful sound followed. I can play music, he exclaimed, hopping up and down with glee. He was just so happy that he played, and soon all the other grabbers held on to Sunny's golden petal, and they too joined in. The forest was full of the sound of an orchestra of grasshoppers playing their music. The grasshoppers thanked the wildflowers. You have saved us. Now we shall bring music back into the forest, they said. We are not scared of the witch anymore. Back in the cave, investigating the blurred images within her crystal ball, the witch was baffled by the sound of music playing. What's that? She wailed. Are my ears deceiving me? She stormed over to the entrance of the cave and screamed at the little mouse, who was still imprisoned in her tight grip. Is that music I can hear? How can that possibly be? Who dares defy me? Smashing the crystal ball onto the floor in her rage, she grabbed the broomstick and her hat and swooped into the air. The terrified little mouse had no choice but to go with her. The wildflowers carried on their journey, unaware that Circe was on her way. They felt happy that they were able to help the grasshoppers find their music. As they walked through the gloomy forest, they saw a young, great spotted woodpecker with tears in his eyes. He was perched on the branch of a tree. The woodpecker had a red cap and an undertail and white shoulder patches. What's wrong, Master Woodpecker? Asked Rosie. The witch has put a spell on all the woodpeckers, he answered. We can't create beautiful wood carvings anymore. She made my beak soft, and now it's not hard or powerful enough to hammer holes into the tree. Bark, I'm so sad because my art makes the forest look so pretty. And all the animals love looking at my work. Feeling sorry for the woodpecker, Rosie said, Take one of my delicate pink petals, Master Woodpecker. Close your eyes and think about all of the wonderful works of art that you will create. After a few moments, the woodpecker's beak started to get stronger. He moved his head and body into a position and started to drill. He carved and carved his beak, now a powerful tool, and when he had finished, there was a perfectly chiseled pattern on the tree. Oh, thank you, wildflowers. I'm so happy. I can make the forest beautiful with all my art again. The wildflowers were delighted. The witch flew through the air on her broomstick and heard the orchestral sound of grasshoppers' music. As she continued on her journey, she saw beautiful carved designs on the trees, and to her dismay, the forest started to brighten up wherever the art was appearing. Circe was furious. How is this possible? She bellowed. Somebody's going to pay for this. Look, pointed Poppy, over there. Honeybee workers are sitting on the floor. Worker bees are too busy to stop and rest. They gather food, protect their colonies, and seek out new hive locations. There must be something wrong, she stated. Why are you sitting on the floor? She asked the bees. They looked at the wildflowers with sadness in their eyes. The witch has taken away our ability to do our waggle dance, which is the only way we can find our families, to find nectar and pollen to eat and water to drink, they sobbed. We can't move our bodies anymore. Don't worry, take my petal, suggested Poppy, handing the bees one of the flaming red petals. Now close your eyes and imagine yourselves dancing. Suddenly the bees began to wiggle their bottoms and then move their whole bodies, and eventually they started to dance. They danced and danced to their heart's content. Thank you, they cried as they flew back towards their hive. We can bring back dancing to the forest. It'll bring such joy to the flowers. The wildflowers looked around and saw a blurry shape in the dark. Come, hurry, cried Rosie. We have to get home before the witch finds us. Let's start running. As they began to run, they heard a hoarse little voice. Please help me, wildflowers. They looked up and saw a little brown bird with a white belly covered in black spots. What's wrong? Asked Daisy. I can't sing, whispered the unhappy little bird. My singing voice used to fill the forest with beauty, but the witch has taken away my voice. The wildflowers are so anxious to get home before the witch found them. But they could not leave the little bird without helping. Here, said Daisy, giving the bird one of her pure white petals. Hold my petal. Close your eyes and dream that you are singing again. Suddenly, the most beautiful sound they had ever heard filled the air. It was the distinctive singing of a song thrush. The wildflowers were mesmerized. They were so captivated by the beauty of the little bird's voice that they did not notice an extremely angry witch standing behind them. The woeful witch was furious. She towered over the wildflowers, the scared little mouse dangling from her hand. Her fury could be heard throughout the forest. Who are you? She screamed. The wildflowers were frozen with fear. How dare you defy me by bringing art and beauty back into the forest? The grasshoppers are playing music, the woodpeckers are creating wood carvings, and the bees are doing their wiggle dance. I'm going to turn you into pigs for betraying me. She raised her wand. The little mouse jumped out of her hand and ran toward the wildflowers. Circe started to chant her spell. Frogs, spawn and spiders, bats and twigs turned the willful wildflowers into pigs. However, just as Circe was about to wave a magic wand to cast the spell, the singing of the little song thrush interrupted her. Enchanted by the serenity of the song, Circe was transfixed. The captivating melody filled her heart with something that she had not felt for a long time. Love. Suddenly heartwarming memories of her father, brothers and sisters came flooding back. Her heart started to melt and her body was filled with compassion and kindness. Remembering how much she was loved by her family broke the spell that her father had cast. In a puff of sparkly smoke, the woeful witch magically turned back into a beautiful crimson sunbird with fiery orange-red patch on her feathers, on her breast, and yellow-green wings. Circe was truly happy. Her heart was light and full of love. She turned and looked at the wildflowers, gratitude in her eyes. Thank you, wildflowers, for bringing music back into my heart, for reminding me who I truly am, and for turning me back into a sunbird. I have spent so many years looking for a four-leaf clover when I should have been looking for you. You are the power of four that I needed to find. To show my gratitude to you, before I fly back home, I am going to cast one last spell. I am going to turn you all into muses, so that you can inspire beauty and art wherever you go. Poppy, you will be the muse of music and dance. Sunny, you will be the muse of history and astronomy. Rosie, you shall be the muse of art and science. And Daisy, you are going to be the muse of drama and poetry. Circe waved her wand for the last time, and a swirl of scarlet, gold, and rose and white fairy dust. The willful wildflowers were transformed into the willful wildflower muses. Poppy's wings were strawberry red and sparkled like rubies. Sunny's wings were like the colour of amber, honey, and glittering gold. Rosie's wings were a delicate pink. She looked like a fairy princess. Daisy's wings were pure white, like the graceful feathers of a swan. They just looked at each other in amazement. Immediately, the woodland came back to life. All the animals, insects, and reptiles filled the forest with fever once more. The flowers brought back colour, and the trees standing tall let the sun back in to fill the air with light. Thankful to have escaped his fate, the little mouse was finally reunited with his wife. Furthermore, back in the cave, the glowworms were set free once the spell had broken. Circe quietly and humbly left the forest and flew back home where she belonged. Poppy, Sunny, Rosie, and Daisy soared into the air where they danced and twirled and pirouetted, overjoyed with their brand new wings. Eventually, Poppy said, "The woeful witch has gone back home. It is time for us to do the same." She looked at her friends and confessed, I miss my family. They make me feel safe. Sonny looked at Poppy and admitted, for me, home is where I feel loved. It's a place where I can truly be myself, said Daisy, with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. They turned and looked at Rosie. Well, for me, it's wherever you three are, she grinned. Come on, let's go. They turned around and waved goodbye to the animals and finally made their way home. On the other side of the forest, in the hollow of a spooky-looking tree, the wise owl smiled. The end.